We are now convened in open session, and we will now consider action on closed session items. Mrs. Taussand.
Yes, Mr. Burdine. I move to appoint Vincent Harding to the position of Associate General Counsel.
Thank you,
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Taussand and a second by Mrs. James. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, please vote by show of hands. Motion passes. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, sir. I move to appoint Dr. Laurie Westfall to the position of Director of Gifted and Talented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rosenthal and a second by Mrs. James. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote by show of hand. Motion passes. Next up are our board governance items. First being we will review our proposed revisions to local board policy. Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. Okay, so at your place are the policies. I think there are 5 of them, 6 of them, that have the red lines marked on them. So these policies are all ones that came to us because of legal updates. And where's Mr. Scamardo? He can correct me if I say anything incorrectly. These are all legal updates. The policy committee did a cursory, I should say, review of them, and we did not wholesale revise them in any way to our new way of doing business. We mostly focused on the legal updates. A couple of them are new policies, and that's why they're all in blue. Well, the one that's in blue is new. This one that's in red is also brand new, and then the other ones that were existing before have small changes to them for the most part.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mr. Scarmato, do you want to? I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Okay.
Mr. Rice was asking me a question.
Okay.
So.
Go ahead, Mr. Rice.
Well, Mrs. James, you're going to review DFFA, local reduction in force financial exigency. You're saying you haven't had a chance to review these yet, correct?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have reviewed them, but the only review that we've done on this particular one is we've crossed out on page 3 the phrase highly qualified status, because that status, according to the law, Mr. Scamardo, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't exist anymore as a status criteria for a decision in these cases. So that's the only change we made to this, and then we've noted at the end that this policy's been adopted on an expedited process and is not without full review by the policy committee.
Okay.
So we've not reviewed it in its entirety is what I'm trying to say.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scarmato, do you have anything to add?
No, Ms. James got it right on the head. Perfect.
Yeah, at 3 meetings a month or so, I'm become a pretty good handle on this stuff.
Very good handle.
Mrs. Taussand.
Well, and I just want to point out and confirm that my understanding is correct, that these are updated because these are legal policies.
No, these are local policies which are mandated by statute or were out of date because of some changes in the statute.
Right, but they are aligned with legal policies.
Oh, correct, yes.
Yes. My point being that we have to adopt these locally because they are mandated by mandate, and they have to be worded in a particular. Do they have to be worded in a particular way?
No, I mean, basically the mandate is to the board to have a policy.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Good.
Mrs. James.
so
Okay.
Mrs. Taussand, that's a good point. So sometimes the law says that we must have a local policy or it must be in our local policy. And that's what these have come from. Or if something's been excluded from the law, then we're crossing it out in the local policy. What Mr. Rosenthal are really trying to do on all of these is if it's in the legal, we're not putting it in the local, so that we're trying to get to a point so we're not duplicating. Because if the local is redundant of the legal will change automatically, but then we have to take board action to change the local. So we're trying to streamline it a little bit, but it still is quite cumbersome.
Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you very much. Mr. or Dr. Dupree, do you have something you wanted to add? Okay. What's that? Next we're going to review our minutes from the previous meetings.
I would just let the board know that we have received some feedback, and so the documents that are in the board book are subject to further revision. So we will get you clean copies again when we post the meeting for the 25th that incorporate the feedback we've received on these minutes. So feel free to submit more additional feedback if you do further review.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rosenthal?
Is it possible to get a document, because these kind of come out a little bit sporadically, or they have been? Is there a possibility of getting a document with all the minutes in them, rather than having them tied to a particular meeting, so where we have to go search back to?
So do you mean like going back like a year or two, kind of all the minutes compiled?
Yeah,
Like in
exactly.
one-
So like I don't have to remember, okay, that was in this meeting, because when I do go back to the board book, if we didn't approve them in that, then they're not in there. And so I don't know where they came from.
So would you like that digitally or?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
put them all in one
Yeah, that would be good.
folder
One
for you.
Word document or something, just combine them on there so you could search it.
Right, so we've had this conversation before about searchability
Right.
of our documents. And so that, putting them all together would really fix that problem.
So that's doable. All right. Moving right along. 6A3, review the proposed joint election agreement and contract for election services with Fort Bend County. All right. 6B1, review proposed purchases exceeding $50,000 specifically for furniture, related items, and services. Okay. Next, 6C1, review proposed student and staff coalitions to travel to Foshan, China in November 2019 under the Fort Bend County Global Initiative. Okay. 6C2, review proposed international travel during the summer of 2019 for 12 Clements High School students and 1 Travis High School student to participate in the student exchange program with Chiba City, Japan. All right. 6D1, review the proposed resolution of renewal of the contract with Prosperity Bank 70 as the district's depository for the period of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2021, in accordance with Section 45.205B of the Texas Education Code as presented. All right. 6D2, review proposed purchases exceeding $50,000 specifically for paint supplies, and related services. Next, 6D2B, portable classroom building relocations and refurbishments for 2019-20 school year. I had a quick question about this, Mr. Perez. At what point in regards to the portable classroom buildings do we cut ties with them and let them go, and how do we know the ones that can be refurbished?
Once we inspect the superstructure and it's at a point that it just can't be repaired, at that point is when we would go ahead and just dispose of those units. Until that point, normally you can go ahead and do refurbishment on them.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. 6D3A, Review of proposed Phase 2 professional service firms to provide both Bond 2018 services. All right, moving on to 6D 3B. Review proposed purchases exceeding $50,000 specifically for district fleet vehicles. All right. We do not have any more action items this evening. So next will be our audience responses to agenda review items posted for this meeting. Do we have? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
May I have a motion to adjourn, Mrs. Tossan? We have a motion by Mrs. Tossan and a second by Mr. Rosenthal. We are now adjourned.